ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, ਨਮਸਕਾਰ, ਆਦਾਬ। ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਇਸ ਲਾਈਵ ਟਰਾਂਸਮਿਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਤੇ ਇਸ ਲਾਈਵ ਟਰਾਂਸਮਿਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਰਫ ਕਰਾਉਂਦਾ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਹਾਂ। ਸਾਡੇ ਗੈਸਟ ਆਨਰੇਬਲ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ ਹਿਪਕਿੰਸ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ਾਮਿਲ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਵੈਰੀ ਗੁੱਡ ਮਾਰਨਿੰਗ ਟੂ ਯੂ ਆਲ, ਐਂਡ ਇਟਸ ਅ ਵੈਰੀ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਟਾਈਮ, ਐਂਡ ਵੀ ਹੈਵ ਅ ਵੈਰੀ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ guest in our studios, Honorable Chris Hipkins, ex-Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition. Welcome to the show, Chris,
Thank
and
you.
welcome to Radio Spice Studios as well.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you for your time as well. And how's your day been? Good?
It's been really good. Yeah, we've been very early start this morning, though. I was on a very early flight this morning, so out of bed at 5 a.m. But we just come from a visit to Papatoetoe Intermediate, where we were talking about the school lunches program, which has been in the news quite a lot just lately. And
True.
we're talking about the issues that they're having there.
We'll come to that as well. And to start this interview, first of all, I would like to know your reaction to the latest poll surveys, because the recent poll surveys, they all pretty much like they say the same thing, that Labour has come in a stronger position now and be able to form this government. So what's your take on this? Are you happy with this, or are you happy with the poll surveys? What's happening at the moment?
Oh, I'm encouraged by it, but I don't think you can take anything for granted in politics, particularly not at the moment. There's a very volatile time in politics. I think what the polls show is that people are not impressed with the current government. So they're looking around and they're saying, okay, what else is on offer? They like what they're seeing of Labour so far, but I'm not taking that for granted. I wouldn't say their vote's locked in. We know we're going to have to work hard to earn it.
Right.
So I think that's our focus over the next year to 18 months, is to really earn the votes so that we can get even higher. I mean, 35 is great. You know, if we can, that's a good number, much better than what maybe I was expecting a year ago. But we've still got a lot of work to do.
But are you satisfied with this shift of votes? You know, like, are you as a leader of opposition, or as a leader of your party, are you satisfied?
Oh, I'm very pleased to see votes coming back in our direction, but I'm not pleased that probably the biggest reason for that is dissatisfaction with the current government, because I think people can see that what the current government are doing is damaging and actually driving the country backwards.
Right. So this is the same allegation that actually National was actually using about a year ago, when you were in the power, and they were saying the same thing, that the country is moving backwards. So do you, I mean, how do you see this? What were the key findings that you actually found in the elections that actually lead the Labour Party to lose these elections, and now you're gaining back this stronger position again?
Oh, I think the biggest issue facing the country at the last election was the cost of living crisis, and there's no question about that. That was really hurting people, and governments all around the world who faced election in 2023 lost those elections, and I think and even last year as well. And I think the cost of living crisis was right at the forefront of that. That's still there, and the current government haven't solved that problem. And I think that people had very high hopes that they would solve it. But I think we also have to be honest that a lot of the issues, a lot of the problems the country's facing didn't just pop up during our time in government over the last 6 years. They've actually been decades in the making. You know, our rundown infrastructure, the fact that our wages haven't kept up with Australia, the fact that a lot of New Zealanders leave the country every year to move to Australia because they can have a better life there. These things haven't just suddenly happened. They've happened that's built up over a long period of time.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And another thing, actually, because the National Party has always been blaming this as well, and I think this was a key factor as well, which we found out that they always been blaming that Labour has been too soft on the crime. So do you think that, like, this situation escalated as well, the crime related law and order, like all these problems, they kind of lead to what happened with especially with the results of Labour Party?
I think we need to make sure that we're keeping the community safe whilst breaking the cycle of offending. So, I want there to be fewer crimes in the first place, and just locking more people up doesn't achieve that. In fact, we know that to some extent we can make that worse. So of those young offenders, about 90% of those worst young offenders have a parent who was in jail or in prison, and simply repeating that cycle is not going to actually make us a safer country. But we do need more police on the beat. We do need to do things that help to keep our small businesses safe. I heard that concern as Minister of Police for the brief time that I was Minister of Police. I heard that concern from the small businesses saying, actually, we don't feel safe in our businesses, and in some cases it's not just their business, it's their home as well. And so we need to make sure that we're keeping them safe while we break the cycle of crime. And so I've certainly heard that message.
Yeah, I totally with you, and I also believe that you didn't get actually a long term as a prime minister for your tenure as well. It was a short term, but do you actually see like all these things actually been escalating, like especially the law and order situation, crime, and cost of living crisis as well?
Oh, I think if you look, around the world post COVID, post the pandemic, you've seen an escalation in violent crime. You've seen an escalation in the cost of living. So these aren't just unique to New Zealand, but whomever the government is in New Zealand has a responsibility to fix them. And, I think the cost of living is still getting worse for a lot of Kiwi families. And we've still got a lot of work to do around crime and issues like, retail crime, for example.
True.
I don't think vigilante justice, though, is the way to solve that. And it's been really encouraging, actually, to see a lot of those small businesses, a lot of the Indian small businesses saying that they think the idea of citizens' arrests would actually make them less safe and potentially put them in a more risky situation, because I happen to agree with that.
Yeah, I'll be coming on to that question again. So I'll take your point on that as well. Just like related to this question, as we just discussing the cost of living pressure and the economic slowdown as well. What's your plans? What's your party's plans actually? If you come into the power, how are you going to handle this crisis, the cost of living crisis and the economic slowdown for the country?
Well, I think the Reserve Bank has done the job that it needed to do in bringing the headline rate of inflation back down. I think we've got to look at the areas where cost of living is still hurting families. So power prices, electricity prices is one of those areas. And we need to really do more to make sure that power prices in New Zealand are much more competitive. And that means investing in renewable energy, which is cheaper than fossil fuels. We need to make sure we do something about supermarkets. There isn't enough competition in that area. And, it's difficult for small businesses to access the wholesale supply chains that are currently dominated by the two big players. There's a lot of small businesses, a lot of Indian small businesses who really tell me that as well.
Right.
So we've got to do more in that area. And then we've got to look at things like rates. Rates is one of the things that's really affecting households at the moment. And the current government are making that problem worse, not better.
Yeah, that's. And are you actually concerned with a number of people, large number of peoples, they actually fleeing the country, leaving the country, heading to overseas for like better future, mostly going to Australia, UK, all these countries. So it's a record numbers. Are you concerned with these numbers?
If you ask, me, what my number one long-term concern for the country is, it's the exodus of talented Kiwis leaving every year. Last year, it was the biggest exodus on record in terms of the number of people who left. We've got to create a country which gives them a future so they want to stay here. You can't stop people leaving, but you can create a future for the country where they want to stay. I don't want my kids are quite young, but I don't want them to think that when they become young adults, so the only way they can get a good, well-paying job, the only way they can buy their own home is to move to Australia. I want them to be able to do those things here in New Zealand. And at the moment, the economy that we've got in New Zealand is not providing them with those opportunities. And so that we've got to fix.
So the National Party is actually claiming that they know the economy really well, and they always blame you that you don't have a basic understanding of economics. Is that right?
Oh, it's just absolute nonsense. I mean, I think what they've shown us since the election is that they really struggle with the basics of economics themselves. I mean, Nicola Willis's idea that you can cut government investment and that somehow the economy is going to grow as a result of that, it's been proven false every time that's been tried. Actually, they're making what's a really tough situation in the economy worse for a lot of Kiwi families. There are 13,000 fewer people working in building and construction now than there were on election day. And what's the number one reason that those businesses, those firms in building and construction say has caused that? It's the government stopping spending on things like building new state houses, rebuilding schools, rebuilding hospitals, and even roading projects, which have all been put on hold. So, I think they've demonstrated to New Zealanders that actually, while they talk a big game on the economy, they don't know how to deliver on it.
So that's the same thing they tell about Labour Party. They said like these guys, they actually ruined the economy over the last 6 years, and we are trying to fix it. How true is that?
Oh, I think it's just absolute nonsense. I mean, we had to run the country through a global pandemic. And if they think that spending money on things like the wage subsidy, which kept businesses from going broke and kept people in work, if they think that that was ruining the economy, I hate to see what the alternative would have been. The alternative would have been a whole lot of businesses simply disappearing when COVID-19 showed up, and never to return. The economic carnage would have been so much worse if they had been in charge.
Would you have done the job cuts like if you were a prime minister today?
Did say in the public sector, the public sector increased spending because of COVID. And we said that actually we needed to dial some of that back, as we came out the other side of the pandemic. So we had set some savings targets for government departments, but we'd set achievable, realistic ones, not ones that involved cutting frontline public services like this government are doing. And you've got the bizarre situation in the health system at the moment where people are losing their jobs only to find, and these are frontline staff losing their jobs only to find that the jobs then are being advertised and they're having to apply back for the job that they've just lost.
Right. And just regarding this also, I wanted to take your views on what do you think about the current healthcare system in New Zealand?
Oh, I think the health system's under a huge amount of strain. And we've got to, again, let's be realistic here. One of the reasons we're spending so much more money on health, that increase in investment in health that we made, which National calls wasteful spending, one of the reasons we're spending so much more money on health is that the population is bigger and it's getting older. And those two things cost money. And there are more medical treatments available now than there ever have been before. And that costs money as well. So, we actually don't spend as much on health as a percentage of our economy as other comparable countries do. So if we want better outcomes for our health, the number one thing we've got to do is increase the amount of money that we're spending on it.
So this is the thing, because still all the problems are the same, and a common New Zealander is still struggling with the same issues, the healthcare system and all that. Would you, if you're given a chance, if you come into the power in the next elections, so healthcare system is that going to be on your priority list?
Health will absolutely be sort of in the top three priorities for our next Labor government. We've got to get a much greater focus on preventative healthcare, for example. If we keep people healthier, so they're not showing up in emergency departments with avoidable illness, then actually the pressure on emergency departments will ease and they'll be able to provide better healthcare to the people that actually need it. But there's far too many people showing up in emergency departments today and in our hospitals today because we're not providing them with what they need to stay healthy in the first place.
True. And just coming back to from where we started, you just mentioned that you've been in Pepito this morning, just visiting some schools today. So what's your take on the government's program on the school lunches?
I think the government have absolutely messed up the school lunches program. It was working very well. Kids were getting a free healthy lunch every day. They were eating them. There was about 94% of the lunches being delivered to schools were being eaten every day. Now schools will report that they're lucky if half the lunches get eaten if they show up. A lot of the lunches don't show up on time or don't show up at all. And the kids complain that they're inedible when they do arrive. So I think, they've taken a program that was working and they've basically just ruined it. And the kids are the ones who are suffering because of that.
Cool. We have a lot of listeners and people who actually also giving their opinions as well. I won't actually come into this at the moment because it's a live interview, and I will actually take your comments later. Just another thing I actually wanted to know, the school lunches program. So if Labour comes into the power, so what you going to do to rectify all these problems that's actually happening at the moment, especially with the kids, like all these issues happening, because it's been happening all over. There was a Whangarei school last week. They came with the same issues as well. They're not happy. So how are you going to actually, what are you going to do about it?
Well, I think one of the things we've got to do is make sure that schools have the choice to continue to go back to the local lunch providers that were doing a much better job of providing their kids with food. And then we've got to look at the adequacy of the funding for that, because $3 a day is not enough to provide kids with a free, healthy, nutritious lunch that's going to, I'm a parent. I know how much it costs to feed a kid every day, and $3 a day is not enough.
That's right. Also, because you're visiting Pepito as well, and this is the suburb that has been also hit hard over the years with the especially criminal activities here, and the retailers have not been happy with that as well. And with the proposed changes, especially it's been announced a few days ago, with the proposed changes to the retailers and how they can arrest and detain criminals or the people into their businesses. So, what's your take on this? What do you think about this? Should the businesses or the retailers, they should be given that powers to detain or arrest people?
I think it's actually really dangerous what's being proposed. I think it's going to create more risk for businesses because we have seen tragic examples before of where business owners have pursued people who have been, stealing things from them, and they have been injured or, in the worst cases, killed. And I don't want to see more of that happening. I think it is important that there are consequences for those who are undertaking that kind of violent activity. So we do need an active police presence there. But my message would be we've got to leave that part of it to the police, because if shopkeepers are being told that actually the police aren't going to help you, you've just got to do this yourselves, which seems to be the message from the current government, I actually think that's going to make them less safe. So I'd love to see more foot patrols. I think it's good. And, credit to the current government. They've put more foot patrols as a priority for police, and I fully support that. I do not support what they're proposing around citizens' arrests. I think that actually says that the police, that everyone else should do the police's job for them. We've got to have faith in the police to do that job.
So what's your take on the judiciary system, the current judiciary system that's working? So do you think there needs to be done some reforms for the regarding the current judiciary system as well? So,
I think there definitely needs to be a focus on speeding up the judicial system. That's taking far too long for cases to get to court. It's taking far too many hearings for an outcome to be achieved. I think the court system really does need a really good shake-up. The fact that you've got victims of crime spending a lot of time sitting outside a courtroom waiting to have their say, I think is just unacceptable. So I think the court system definitely needs a really good shake-up.
So also, Chris, I just wanted to ask you regarding some immigration policies as well, because with Indian community, they also all the time they want to hear about the immigration news.
Yeah.
And in your last term as a prime minister, Labour Party, they just made a few changes to the current immigration settings that were actually being done at that time, and that allowed a number of people they came to New Zealand to just overcome the labor crisis that was happening at that time. Nowadays, like, there's so many stories that's been coming. Actually, they also have been stories for the scams and stuff. I'm not going to that, but there was a policy that was announced by the National Party. It was regarding the parent visa. So they just proposed this longer term parent visa, and it's been delayed for a long time, and people actually want to hear about this, and there's no news of that. So if you're given the chance, if you become the prime minister, so what kind of policies you can frame better than the National Party regarding the parent category?
Yeah, look, I think that the current government should deliver on their promise for a longer term parent visa. I actually think it would be a very positive thing at the moment. It has very minimal cost to the New Zealand public in terms of public support, because the parents who are coming here will need to meet their own costs. They'll need to provide their own health insurance and so on. And so I actually think that the cost to us as a country is going to be quite low, but the benefit for those families is going to be very significant.
True.
And so, yes, I think they should speed up their process. This was a promise they made. They should deliver on that promise. I'm very proud of our work as a government to deliver the Resident Visa 2021. I know what a difference that made. I've met many of the people who received those visas, and I know what a difference it made. But it did, in fairness, take a long time to get that through the system. It created a huge workload for Immigration New Zealand. Those have been processed now. So things like the parent category visa, I think now is the time for the government to deliver on that commitment.
So if they don't deliver, you'll deliver?
Yeah, I mean, we also committed to that at the last election. I think it's a good commitment to make.
Right, cool. Also, what do you think about the current situation between New Zealand and Cook Islands? So the tension is been there. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, I'm concerned, and I think that Winston Peters is understandably frustrated by the Cook Islands' lack of information. I was encouraged actually that he raised the issue with China when he was in China yesterday, I think it was. I think that was the right thing for him to do. I was also encouraged with the fact that they were quite forthcoming with information to him about the arrangements that they've entered into with the Cook Islands. So I think I don't always agree with Winston Peters, but on this I do agree with him. I think it is positive that the Chinese government have been so engaging with us on the issue. I think it's disappointing that the Cook Islands government haven't been.
True. Chris, also, I just want to ask you another question that's regarding another proposed change that's going to be happening. So this is regarding the proposed 4-year parliamentary term. So what's your take on this? Do you support this or you don't support this?
I do support a 4-year parliamentary term. I think it'll actually lead to a better quality of decision making. I think in New Zealand, because of the 3-year term, we tend to rush decisions in order for governments to say we did this thing whenever the next election rolls around. But I think if we had a 4-year term, we could slow that process down a bit and make sure that we're making good decisions rather than quick decisions.
Cool. Thank you so much, Chris. That's all I wanted to know. And hopefully in the future, we will keep inviting you and we will ask you some more questions. And I'd be really thankful for your time today. And what's your plans for the weekend, actually?
Oh, for the weekend, tomorrow I'm heading down to New Plymouth to Matatini. So the Olympics of Kapahaka tomorrow in New Plymouth. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time. And we shall talk again. And thanks so much for your precious time. And we have actually so many listeners and the viewers who have just joined us. And they all actually saying, they're just actually welcoming you to the show, and they're saying good things as well. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Lovely to be here.
Thanks so much. So guys, ਇਹ ਸੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ ਹਿਪਕਿੰਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰੇਡੀਓ ਸਪਾਈਸ ਦੇ ਦੂਜੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੇ ਜਾਰੀ ਰਹਿਣਗੇ। ਸੋ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਇਸ ਟਰਾਂਸਮਿਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਜੁੜਨ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ, ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ।